Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. Can I share my
Yes,
screen
sir.
now? I prepared a few slides so that I can introduce myself properly. Yes, let me know if you can see my screen. Yes. Hello. Okay. Um, hi, my name is Neil. I am the co-founder of Workbean, and my talk today is going to be about identifying your company culture. So, a few things about me. I guess I can tell you about Workbean's mission, which is we aim to become Asia's largest directory of company cultures, and we are getting there. So, what does that mean? That means that we don't want to just show you the amenities, the benefits of a company, but we actually want to show you what it's like to work for that company. So that includes habits of the employees there, the shared vision, how they do things, and more than that. So a few things about me. I am a certified employer brand leader, which helps me in um, creating the vision and the product roadmap for Workbean. I graduated from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore 2 years ago, back in 2019. I was a stockbroker in the Philippines. I did that for like 3 to 4 years. And I also came from the banking industry. So I was also a former a government employee in the BP. So I have a couple of pictures here. Fully booked is my favorite place to go to. If I go to a certain mall or a certain place, you would almost always see me going inside one of these places. My favorite fictional character is Darth Vader, pictured here. And the most difficult thing that I've had to learn is this course certificate that I did from Coursera, which is Introduction to Web Development with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It was a really difficult struggle for me since I am a finance guy with a business background. Learning this, I would say, is more difficult than any other courses that I've taken in my life. So yeah, that's a brief introduction. Do I turn it over back to you, or do I just proceed?
No, sir, you can proceed na po, sir.
Okay, sige, I'll proceed. Okay, so good evening. I think we have about at least 30 participants here in this call. So welcome. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk. Again, I'll be talking about how to identify company culture, but I will basically have three major points of discussion. So I'm going to talk about the Great Resignation, which I think diba, most of you have heard that this is something that's been happening in the US and in some parts of Asia. I'm also going to be talking about strong versus weak cultures and um, distinguishing that from good versus bad culture. And then the third, which is diba, how do you find the right company culture for you? So first, I want to talk about the Great Resignation and the future of work. So what is the Great Resignation? This is a term or actually a business problem that is actually plaguing a lot of HR teams right now. This started during the pandemic, and I think escalated mid of this year around June or July, wherein in the US, at least 2 to 3 million people are resigning from their jobs each and every month. So it's a big deal. That's around 2% of the US workforce resigning every month. And it's because of these things. When they did a survey of why people are resigning, 49% say that they are working longer hours than they would like. I feel that this is something na even us, 'di ba, nararanasan din natin. Especially once the work from home started. 41% of people are saying that they are having difficulty setting work and life boundaries. And then 44% are feeling pressured to be reachable at all times, which means, 'di ba, whatever you're doing, when your boss calls you, you have to answer, which is a very difficult situation to be in, especially when you're doing other things. And basically, what HR experts are saying is that now the burnout level of people is at an all-time high, which is the biggest, if like, probably the biggest factor why people are resigning. So next, diba, we have a couple of people who are asked about what the Great Resignation is. And to the left, we have Adam Grant, who is a professor at Wharton Business School. And he's just saying that diba, the Great Resignation isn't just a mad dash away from the office. It is actually the culmination of a long march toward freedom. Flexibility is more than choosing the place where you work, and it's having freedom to decide your purpose, your people, and your priorities. So he's basically saying that this has been a long time coming. The Great Resignation isn't a product of the pandemic. It's the pandemic is not the reason why people are resigning. It's just that during the pandemic, it just accelerated that realization that hey, diba, I have to do something for myself. I am not a place where I want to be. And this is actually complemented by the quotation from the right to the right, which is from Simon Sinek, who's the author of Starting with Why. He says that one of the reasons why the Great Resignation is happening is because there are so many substandard corporate cultures, which is what we're going to talk about today. And people don't feel included, needed, wanted, seen, heard, and understood. And when people look at the unknown and where they are, they would rather risk going to the unknown because that's more appealing than staying where they are. So, with that, diba, what does this actually mean for the future of work? So, a couple of HR people from the US have been interviewed regarding people resigning, regarding the Great Resignation. And this actually gives a lot of opportunities, especially for digital talents in Asia, specifically Southeast Asia. Why? Because when a lot of people resigned from their work in the US, because in the US, since a lot of them have been vaccinated already, they're starting to return to the offices. So medyo advanced sila than what is happening here. And people don't want to return to their offices. They say that iba, I would rather work from home, be with my family. I've already found my groove in the past 2 years. I know my rhythm. I am more productive at home. I don't want to spend 1 to 2 hours commuting every day just to go to work. And the HR people in the US are saying, if you guys don't want to go back to work and you would rather stay at home, then this is actually a good opportunity for us companies to be able to hire talent outside the US. And where do they go? They actually go to places such as Vietnam, Thailand, Australia, and the Philippines. So Workbean being a company that showcases different company cultures, and we also will help in terms of finding the right talent for these companies. We are actually seeing a lot of companies from like the likes of Singapore, Australia, who are looking for digital talents from the Philippines. So they're starting to hire here. Why? Kasi nga, di ba, going back, why do they have to remain why do they have to keep on getting people from the US when they can also get talents from different parts of the world, especially in the Philippines? So that's what it means for the future of work. More opportunities for us, more opportunities for you since you are the pinnacle of digital talents. So I guess going to my second part of the agenda, which is I want to discuss what's the difference between a strong and a weak culture. So before that, I want to discuss what is company culture. So basic generalization for company culture is it is the set of shared values, goals, attitudes, and practices that characterize an organization. And I love this quote from Greg Urban, who's a business anthropologist. He says that the culture of a company today could be very much different from its culture a year from now. Especially if you're working for companies that are in the growth phase. So, for example, you started with a company that has 50 employees 2 years ago. Now they have 150. 2 years from now, they're going to grow to 300, to 500, and even 1,000 5 years down the road. The culture of the company the company at the stage wherein they only have 50 employees is going to be very different from their culture when they're at 200 employees, and it's going to be very different when they're at 1,000 employees. So the thing about company culture for HR people now is how are we going to define it, especially as we grow, and how are we going to once we define it, how are we going to identify people that are actually fit for our culture? So aside from being assessed for skills, aside from being assessed for your experience, HR teams and hiring managers also actually assess whether you are going to be a right fit for the team that you're applying for. So next, so just to distinguish strong versus weak cultures and good and bad cultures, I actually believe this saying from Brian Chesky, diba? Pogi si Ryan Chesky from Airbnb. Um, he says that there's no such thing as a good or bad culture. It's either a strong or a weak culture. And a good culture for somebody else may not be a good culture for you. So this is, I guess, a prelude to me discussing about how to identify the right culture for you. The right culture for your friend or your best friend might not be as good a culture for you. Basically, because sometimes when we have friends that are sometimes extroverts or they're more open to experience, they're more the risk taking type, and we're not like that. When they say, "Oh, this company has a very good culture, come join me," and then once we join them and then we experience the culture for ourselves, then we realize, okay, this is not working out for me. While our friend might be loving it, we might not be getting that same experience because we are very different people. So that's what Brian Chesky is saying. Again, diba, a good culture for somebody else might not be a good culture for you. That's why he's saying there's no good and bad culture. But the thing about having a strong or a weak culture simply means that the culture of an organization may be different from the culture of the team that you are joining. So let's say most of you here are digital talents, engineers, software developers. Like a good example would be Workbean's culture. Workbean's culture as a whole is I would say strong because our vision also translates to the vision of our engineering and software team. But our engineering and software team have their own culture. So if like we around 16 in the team now, our internship team has a different culture from the engineering team, which will have a different culture from our sales and customer success team. But as a whole, we have the same shared values. We believe in the same ideals. We want to achieve the same results. But they will have their different habits. They will have their different practices in those subcultures. So I guess in the next two slides, I want to introduce siguro two frameworks that you can probably use in your current companies or when you're looking for companies to join in the future. So first, I want to introduce the integrated culture framework. This is actually the culture framework from Harvard Business School. They coined this in 2018, so it's pretty recent. And they say there are according to them, there are 8 different types of company cultures. So there's the learning company culture, purpose-driven, caring company culture, orderly company culture, a company culture that values safety, that values authority, values results, and values enjoyment. So just to break it down further, the two cultures above, which are learning and purpose, these two are what you call culture first company cultures. So for a learning company culture, they are focused on having very good skills and experience programs. They will have very good learning programs and change programs. If you are in it to learn more about, or if you are in it to learn more about the skills that you have, or if you want to learn, if you want to go to the master level of what you have, then go to a company that has a very strong learning culture, because they will enable you to achieve your goals of becoming a master at your craft. The next one, another culture first company culture, is the purpose driven company culture. So these types of cultures are very focused on their mission and vision. Everything that they do, they go back to whether is this new project that we are undertaking, is this aligned with our culture and mission. I would say work bean falls somewhere in the purpose and learning part, mainly because when we have engineering sprints, when we come up with new features, when we come up with new products, we always ask ourselves, is this going to help job seekers find out more about the company culture? So we always go back to the purpose. If you have a company that is before the caring one, these four: enjoyment, caring, order, and results. These are what you call operations first company cultures. They are more about how people do things. So if you have a caring type of company culture, you will find a lot of team members who really support each other. Um, you would see that when someone is new, when they go into the company, their team members would rally around them to help them understand the ropes faster, and then get them sort of running and learning about their tasks a lot quicker than when they would be left alone. If you have a company culture that values order, this is you would have there is still teamwork, but it's more of the process is very much streamlined. That, for example, you're the engineering team, you have to find out more about what the customer's feedback is regarding the new feature that you released. Then the communication avenue between the engineering team and, let's say, the customer facing team is streamlined. So you have your own engineering team, you'd be able to work together seamlessly, but there are clear channels to enable you to find out what you need to find out, as enabled by the other teams in the company. Next is results driven culture. You would find this is very common in startups. We have a lot of processes and metrics in place. So even when we create new features, we would have clear metrics on how to measure them. You would have, I would say, we can contrast this with, let's say, the big conglomerates. The big conglomerates, such as, let's say, banks, they would be results driven. They would have a lot of processes and metrics in place, but they would also have order, because the processes are already streamlined since they are big and they have a lot of resources. For startups, you would have a hard time looking for order. Like, given the case of Workbeat, for example, when we first onboarded our head engineer, we didn't have a lot of processes in place. So when we would have our sprints, when we would have our meetings, we would create our processes as we go, which is very different from when you join a big company. Especially, like, you can join a big company like Google. They are results driven, but they also have a good order in place. Enjoyment would be those that they are also process driven. They are in for continuous improvement, but they are this type of company culture is more about they know what they have to do for a specific day. They would go about their day and sort of improve themselves as they look at the different processes that they have to go through. So next we have management first frameworks, which are the authority first company culture and the safety first company culture. For the authority company culture, you would have a lot of there's going to be a lot of accountability and reporting going to that's going to be in place. You would have to report to your supervisors. You would have to report to the managers, to the CEO, and then those along the line. You would find authoritative cultures as those that are quite bureaucratic, but there are advantages to that. Because if a company has a lot of approvals in place, that means that the sort of business that the company is in would be in more of like let's say government, more of like they would need approvals such as banks. They would need approvals for data privacy and so on and so forth. So safety first, company cultures, you'd find these a lot in process driven manufacturing companies and FMCG companies. So you'd have the likes of Jollibee, the likes of McDonald's. They would value safety above all else. Because for, let's say, for the food industry, if you remember the case of Jollibee, wherein merong picture ng towel na, di ba, this customer, when Jollibee delivered the food, the chicken joy to the customer, accidentally yung towel ng staff na deep fry nila with the breading of the chicken joy. So that caused a big, di ba, uproar in social media. And I think, di ba, Jollibee handled that very well. So these types of companies, they would have ironclad governance and policies in place to prevent these sorts of things from happening. And then another culture framework that you can probably look at is the one that we have on Workbean, which is the employer brand personality. So this is different from the company culture framework that I showed you earlier. The company culture framework is more about what the company values. The company values results. The company values order. The company values safety. The employer brand personality from Workbean is more of how do employees work with each other. So here I have five different personalities, but there are a lot of personalities in between. So you can be competent and rugged and sincere, and so on and so forth. So just to explain this quickly, the type of framework that Workbean uses, the employer brand personality, is more of determining whether a company's whether how the employees work together. Are they full of excitement? Are they more of, diba, a lack of a better term, competent? Competent is more of do they value data? Do they value problem solving? Do they analyze problems before they proceed? A company is rugged. A company can be rugged, which means that they are not afraid to get their hands dirty in solving problems or solving tasks. They're okay to go to, diba, the nitty-gritty of things. They're okay to just go to the customer, ask them about their problems, and then come back. A sophisticated company, I would say, would be like the likes of Apple, wherein all of their products and services have to be pristine. They have to look a certain way. They have to look clean and sophisticated. So that's the type of brand that they have. And then lastly, sincerity. You would have a sincere employer brand personality if you would have a company wherein employees treat each other like family. Everybody's friendly with each other. They have a strong father figure. And then diba, you'd have companies wherein they call each other mamshi, they call each other bro, and then stuff like that. So this is the type of framework that Workbean uses. So in case you're interested to find out more about what your company's personality is, you can go to this link and then take the assessment for yourself. And then one thing that a strong, I would say, statement made by Brian Chesky about having a strong and weak culture, this is applicable to having the organizational culture and the sub tribes within that. So sub tribes are just basically teams who create a bond among themselves because of shared roles, shared goals, and shared hardship. So as I mentioned earlier, given the example of Workbean has its own organizational culture, but our engineering team has their own sub tribe. Same with our sales team, same with our internship team. And then, diba, sub-tribes are not necessarily bad. They are natural progressions of communities. But the question is, and this is what we measure between strong and weak cultures, is how high are the walls between the tribes? So usually, this is something that I hear when we talk to engineering teams and marketing teams. Lagging my, you would almost always see conflict between the engineering slash the product team and the marketing team. It's basically because yung marketing team, they are sort of, they want to sell a certain feature set at a certain price for a certain talent demographic. And then when they go back to the engineering team and then say, this is the package that we want, the engineering and the product team would say, and this happens to Workpin as well, this is not the specific market that we designed our product for. Our product is designed for a different target demographic. So you would have cultures or sub tribes having an us versus them mentality versus having a hunter and gatherer mentality. So hunter and gatherer, this is as an allusion to the early days of humanity, diba? A tribe has for a tribe has a sub tribe of hunters and they have a sub tribe of gatherers. But they work with each other to provide meat for the hunters, and then for the gatherers, they provide sort of the vegetation for the tribe. So just diba, just to show you how it works, the sub tribes within Workbean. So this is our current structure. And then we have sub tribes within Workbean. So the Workbean structure currently looks like this. Our engineering team has their own sub tribe. Jane, our chief product officer, with Marie, our head engineer, and then Donald, they have their own sub tribe because they're the ones who talk to each other day to day. So our CTO is excluded from the sub tribe. And then Marie and Donald, our developers, have their own sub tribes kasi sila yung day to day nag-usap. So they have their own culture as well. So same with the client facing team. So these three ladies, they're part of our client facing team. And then these two, who's Ali, who's part of our recruitment marketing, and EJ, who is our content and media manager, they have their own sub tribe or their own manner of working. And then same goes for the interns. The interns, since they have schedules that are quite difficult to manage because they have classes. So sila means sometimes they meet each other 7:30 in the evening just to have a quick meeting. Sometimes it's 8 in the morning. And then sila lang nandun because they don't have a specific time. So this is what I was describing in terms of having an organizational culture and sub tribes within that culture. So okay, we go to, I guess, the third and probably the most important part of the talk, which is how do you find the right culture for you? So it's quite simple when you look at it. When you try to find the right company culture for you, you use sort of a magnifying glass. And the lens that you use should have these two components. You have to find out who you are, and you have to find out who you want to be. So once you know those two things, then you can look at the different types of company cultures using these two things as your lens. And then that's the only way when you can find out if this is the type of company culture for you. So let me break it down in the next couple of slides. So first step in finding the right culture for you is you have to find out first who you are. This is what you call self-awareness. I don't know, for the students here who still need to, I guess, step into the workforce. This is something that would might not come naturally to you, because it takes experience and quite a bit of meditation to find out who you really are and what type of work environment fits for you. So I guess, diba, we with finding out who you are, um, there are four things that you can use to do this. The first is, if you haven't done so already, I'm a big fan of this. Is you take personality assessments. You just don't just take one. You don't just take you don't take the ones on Facebook. Yung like you choose a picture, find out which Harry Potter house you belong to. That won't give you much, but try to take the in-depth personality assessment. So one of them is MBTI. So this is called Myers-Briggs type. So this will give you whether you're an introvert, extrovert, you are what else? Thinking or judging. So it's going to help you figure out what are the types of people you should be around and what types of weaknesses you might have. Another one is the Strengthsfinder. This is from, I guess, Gallup. It's a research firm partnered with. It's around 1,000 pesos. What it gives you is, it gives you, well, I would say, that you have as a character. For example, my strengths are thinking, analysis, big picture thinking, and me, yes, approach problems and approach know my like to compete with others, you like to win, and but that's an industry that you might be interested to go into. The third thing to find out who you are is again self. Examining your or now, for example, about what are the necessary habits and disciplines that I should develop. If I want to be a leader in 5 years, then I need to be able to become a better communicator. I need to be able to translate the company's vision to our team's vision. I need to be able to learn how to develop people or help them develop their skills. Because as a leader, you cannot just but you have to expand your thinking of what a leader is. A leader is not just someone who gives an overall direction, but this is also something I learned. A leader is someone who helps develop the people around them to the best type of person that they can be. So after you have your mission and goals, and you know the necessary habits and disciplines that you need to do to be able to achieve that mission and that goal, then find your personal heroes that have already reached those goals. So I guess my perfect example of this would be myself. My personal hero, although it's medyo, he's kind of far away from what I want to, far away from where I am now. My personal hero is Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman is the co-founder of LinkedIn. He's one of the people who are part of the PayPal Mafia. The PayPal Mafia, just to give you a quick introduction for those of you who don't know, the PayPal Mafia is this group of, I don't know, 10 or 15 people in Silicon Valley that sort of paved the way for startups. They are diba, sort of the gurus in the startup community. Like example is Reid Hoffman. He's from PayPal. He eventually co-founded LinkedIn. The founders of YouTube are also part of the PayPal Mafia. Elon Musk is part of the PayPal Mafia. And diba, I think also the founder of Square is he also part of the PayPal Mafia. So those guys, they started the startup revolution in Silicon Valley. So Reid Hoffman, he's my personal hero, and I listen to his talks, I read his books, and I try to diba, take the same steps that he's taking because he's already there when it comes to my personal mission and my personal goals. And I think diba, out of these four, I would say the thing that could probably make the biggest difference for you would be to identify who your anti-heroes are. That means who is the person that you don't want to be. That's what an anti-hero is. Um, so if you have your mission, you have your goal, you know what it takes to get there. You have a person that you're looking up to, and he's already there. He or she is already there. Your anti-hero is actually going to give you the guardrails. Na, 'di ba? These are the things that I should not be doing, because these are the things that, 'di ba? The things that you should not be doing can actually start today. The habits and disciplines, those things would take time. But to set up the guardrails, to set up sort of the general direction of the person who you want to be, sorry, the person of who you should not be, that can actually start today. So after you have that, then you can examine sort of what the environment is outside. I'm sure a lot of you know this, but this is a very strong principle, which is Ikigai. You have to find out the thing that you love, the thing that the world needs, the thing that you can be paid for, and the thing that you're good at. If you can find the intersection of these four, then that is what you call Ikigai: your passion, mission, vocation, and profession. So that is, diba, that ultimately the ideal scenario is you would be able to find the Ikigai. So I guess, diba, the question is, now that you know about yourself, how the heck do I find out about a company's culture? Now this is quite challenging, I would say, because you won't really find out about the company's culture unless you are immersed in it. There is a reason why companies provide 3 to 6 months of probationary period. This is one of the reasons is diba, even if you are qualified for the job, even if you have the skills, even if you ace the interview, it's that 3 to 6 month process that is going to actually examine you kung, 'di ba, you really fit the way that company works. And 'di ba, at the end of that 3 to 6 month period, I have heard stories wherein HR professionals would tell me, we hired this, 'di ba, magnificent guy who aced the interview, who's everything that we're looking for, but he's just not a team player. He wants to work alone, and that's not who we are as a company. And after 6 months, they decided to let him go. So, 'di ba, that is about, even if you prepare all your life to be good at something, if you don't fit a company's culture, then it's going to be very difficult to stay. So again, diba, yes, it is very challenging, but there is one thing that you can actually do for now, and that is to ask questions of the companies that are ask questions from the employees that are actually working in the company. Get as many stories and experiences that you can from past and existing employees. So don't just go to about you research a company, you find out what their values and mission are. Yes, that's great, diba? They're family oriented and you're family oriented. That's great, but you ask if you can find resources or people that have worked there or are already working there. Then you ask them what the stories are. You ask them specific questions. And what are these types of questions? So there are actually 4 forces of culture. So these 4 forces are shaped by the force of having a shared vision. The second one is the force of having common interests. The third is, diba, the force of habits that are formed. And the fourth one is the force of innovation. So force of innovation might be a vague term, but it's as simple as, does the company enable the employees to explore different ways of doing things? Do they provide the sort of psychological safety for employees to make mistakes and are mistakes tolerant? Well, not just tolerated but accepted as part of the process. And again, diba, as I said earlier, we may have 4 different forces of culture, but these forces may be different from each subtype. So siguro just to give you examples of what types of stories you can expect. If you ask a person about shared values, I just put the sticker here. Today, not tomorrow. This is actually a work bean value. So this story is actually a story from one of our team members, diba? In my previous company, it was every person for herself. If you do OT, you're on your own, but not here. Every person helps out with the task at hand. We make sure that everything gets done. Perfect example of this was last night. Um, the engineering team had to finish the UI UX. Inabot kami ng 4 a.m. Cass was there, and that's the reason why she's sick. She stayed up until 4 just to be with the engineering team, diba, do her work. And diba, not just, diba, even though diba, we're not, Cass and I, we're not software engineers, we're not developers, but Cass is always there to sort of be where the team is. And that's diba, a shared value of today, not tomorrow. Next is common interest. This is also a true story, but not from Workbean. There's this company that we know that there's a may ano sila within it's a big company. They have a big department. I think in their department they have 200 people, and part of their culture is a lot of them are single. So they launched a campaign wherein you can date your coworkers. So that's a common interest. So a lot of them are single. I don't know if it's successful. Kinuwento lang sa akin to ng friend ko, but it's really surprising to have this type of story about a company. And then habits. This is diba, sort of a made-up habit. Diba? During stand-ups at 9 a.m., people turn their cameras on and they literally stand up while they do the. And then lastly, this might be far-fetched, but I think I've heard of a company that actually did this. And then lastly, for innovation, this is also a true story. Every year, we have a challenge in the company where we can win up to 500,000 pesos. We form teams of 4 and present projects to improve on an existing process. So this is actually a true story from a company that I worked at. And they do that. They still do that every year. So may extra, diba? The 500,000 pesos yung winning team. And then lastly, so a few slides before I end. Siguro a tip for those that are going to be entering the workforce for the first time. Don't pick a job, pick a boss. Your first boss is the biggest factor in your career success. A boss who doesn't trust you won't give you opportunities to grow. So again, going back to picking your boss, you have to be able to pick a boss who has a strong character and has a strong sense of company values. And lastly, this is an example of a good boss, a strong person, strong people. Don't put others down; they lift them up. And with that, I end my talk. Sana may napulot kayo, and then thank you for listening.